We'll call the Goshen Board of Education Monday, December 13th, 7 p.m. regular meeting to order. Mr. Schenk, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Herrera.
Here.
Mrs. Gray.
Here.
Mrs. Casey. Mr. Benting.
Here.
Mr. Gray.
Here. We have a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
We have a first. Do we have a second?
Second.
Are there any questions? If not, Mr. Schenk, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Herrera.
Yes.
Mrs. Gray.
Yes.
Mr. Benting.
Yes.
Mr. Gray.
Yes. This time, can we have a moment of silence? Thank you. At this time, we'd like to ask the principal of Spalding Elementary, Ashley Andrews, to lead us into the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And we'll turn it over to you.
We have three young ladies with us today, as well as Mrs. Kendall. They have been working on their Goshen history projects in class as well as during technology time, and they wanted to come today, share a little bit about their presentations and what they are learning.
There we go.
I also want to give a shout out to Ms. Kendall for coming tonight. She has been an invaluable member of our team for the last year and a half, and I'm also really excited that she's joined the Goshen Aspiring Leaders Academy this year, so she's doing some great things for us at school.
All right, so I'm going to do a quick recap on how our Goshen History Unit goes about. So we start our unit off with a field trip. We visit the Anchorage, the cabin, the nature trail, and then we take a bus tour. These last 2 years, retiree Mrs. Clark has led the bus tour. And then we follow that up with class instruction, where students are going to understand how their communities have changed over time and kind of make a connection with the communities now to the community in the past. We also have a partnership with the Goshen Historical Society. Every Wednesday in October, they set aside 2 hours where students can go and learn about particular topics. And then it finalizes with the cemetery tour, which is open to everyone. And then lastly, this year, we've added a Tech Time collaboration. Tech Time is one of our specials this year. So the third graders complete a summative Tech Time project using information they learned from the field trip and class instruction and the Historical Society. So here are just a few pictures from our field trip. Here's where they visited the Anchorage and had a tour inside. And then out at the cabin, Mr. Poe had like 7 different sitters set up where they can learn all different ways of rope making, broom making, different things from the past. And then here they are at the cabin, getting some instruction inside. And then this is outside next to the fire station. So lastly, I want to talk about how we integrated with technology now that we're one-to-one. So first, the students are more and more familiar with the Google platform that we're using. So they created brochures or slideshow presentations to demonstrate their learning as opposed to like projects that they would bring in. So since they are one-to-one, the whole class can be working at Tech Time at the same time as well as in social studies. And Mrs. Gibb is our technology teacher, who has put great effort into teaching them how to create slides, how to format documents into brochures. And then lastly, they're able to submit the work directly to us electronically because we use that Google platform. All right, so first is Miss Elena. She's in my homeroom. She's going to share 2 parts of her brochure with you.
Local war hero. John James Bull was born May 3rd, 1922. Also, he was the oldest of 5 children. John later moved to Goshen, where he and his siblings all attended school. John graduated in 1940. He was a fighter ace in World War II. After the war, he came back to Goshen to be a teacher. Mini Mustang. The Mini Mustang was the smallest horse on the planet. He grew up to weigh 46 pounds. He was born in Goshen on May 17, 1973. He died in 1996. Finally, Elvis Presley tried to buy the horse.
All right, next, Miss Serenity couldn't be with us today, but she is from my other class, Mrs. Greenberg's homeroom. So she talked about the Blacksmith Shop. Do you want to read it for us, Elena?
Blacksmith Shop. Blacksmith is a dangerous job to do. The blacksmith shop is near the Goshen cabin where working with fire or heat, it can seriously burn your hand. You need an adult or a professional to do this type of stuff, and you need protective gear. Blacksmith in Goshen a long time ago would make horseshoes and tools.
Good. And then Serenity also talked to us about Sam Lever.
Sam Lever was born on December 23rd, 1871. He was the right-hand pitcher for the first Pittsburgh Pirates. He was a World Series champion. He was the Goshen schoolmaster because he was a teacher before he started his baseball career. He was a teacher at Goshen. We can find his grave at the Goshen Cemetery. He was the Goshen mailman for 2 years. He died at age 81 on May 19th.
Good job. Good job. All right, next we have Tyra. She's in Mrs. Dozier's homeroom. She didn't do the brochure project. She chose to do the slideshow project. So she's going to share 2 slides with you.
Ariella Cook. Ariella Cook is the one who inspired the Cook and Marcook schools in Marcook schools in Goshen. We wouldn't have the Cook in Marcook. Without her, we wouldn't have the Cook in Marcook. At 13 years old, Ariella Cook's family was told there was an illness in the family, so they brought her down to live with her 2 aunts. She stayed with them and never left. He died in the cabin. It is very fascinating to learn about someone who inspired something we have in our everyday lives. Goshen after the Civil War. Goshen has much history even after the Civil War. Goshen veterans formed the Kilpatrick Post after the Civil War, which raised tens of thousands of dollars for charity and community projects, also helping them donate a Civil War cannon as a memorial in Goshen Cemetery. If you go to Goshen Cemetery, you might even be able to see it.
Awesome. You want to come up here so you can see ya? All right, and last we have Cassidy. She's in Mrs. McClanahan's homeroom, and she also did a brochure project. She's going to share 2 pieces with you.
Jacob Myers. Jacob was born in Penns Valley, Pennsylvania in 1775. When he was older, he was a boatman on the Susquehanna River. Jacob later married Louis Freiberger's daughter, Eve Freiberger. Jacob went out into the wilderness to stake out land for his family. Jacob bought several hundred acres of land 2 miles south of Goshen. He loaded his pony with a sack of seeds, potatoes, rose, shovel, and hunting knife, and made his way to his property. Near his house, he set apart a plot of land and burial in place for friends and family known as Myers Cemetery. Stroop Cook Log Cabin. Located next to the high school, it is owned by Goshen Local School District. It is believed that the log cabin was built around 1804 by German craftsman for Jacob Stroop. James Cook purchased the farm and cabin in 1875. Aurelia E. Cook, who was a heir and member of the original Cook family, was a teacher in Goshen school system. She lived on the farm in the log house until she died in 1995.
So hang on a second, Mrs. King. So, first of all, kids, I hope that you learned something about your community, and I hope that your parents learned something about their community too as well. I think it's one of the neatest things that happens at Spalding when you go through this is to learn there's history all around us. and probably some really fascinating stuff like Mini Mustang. Learning about Mini Mustangs. I actually remember Mini Mustang because I grew up about a mile from there. I never got to see Mini Mustang, but I got to hear about Mini Mustang, and I remember that Elvis was going up there to try to buy Mini Mustang. So, I didn't know Sam Weaver. That was before my time. Everybody out there knew. But I hope you learned something about it, and you did a fantastic job presenting. And wonderful reading skills and speaking skills. You were nice and loud. So I appreciate that. So we got a couple things for you today. First of all, I'm going to recognize Mrs. Kendall. Thank you for coming tonight to the board meeting and leading our kids through this activity. So Mrs. Kendall, we have a certificate for you from the Board of Education. And then I'm going to let you pass these out to your students, and I'll give them their pen.
Selena.
I'd like to introduce who you brought with you today.
Selena, who'd you bring with you tonight?
My mom and my dad.
And Kyra, who'd you bring with you? And Cassidy, who's here from your family?
My sister, my mom, and my dad.
All right, great job.
Nice job.
All right, moving on. We'll turn it over to Daryl Edwards to talk about staff recognition.
Okay, so tonight we have with us Phil Tudor and Mrs. Walker. If you would come forward, I'm going to ask you to talk tonight about Phil Tudor. I think one of the hard things about Goshen schools, and my favorite thing about Goshen schools, it always comes down to it's about the people. We can have the greatest reading program, we can have the best math program, but the most important thing is it's always about people. And we have some tremendous families in our district, children in our district, and people who work here in our district. And, we're going to talk a little bit tonight about Mr. Tudor, because I think people like Mr. Tudor are part of the reason that things that make our schools so very special. Because I consider it a privilege to know Mr. Tudor as a community member and to have him working on our staff. And I want to let Mrs. Walker talk about him because he is getting recognized at the state level by the Ohio Department of Education with a statewide award, and he's up for a national award. And I think he's a perfect example of the incredible people that live in our community and incredible people that work here. And I'm proud to know him, proud to have him working here. So come on up front here, Phil, and I'm going to have Mrs. Walker talk about you, embarrass you up here.
That is my goal.
And we're going to have you introduce later on who you brought with you tonight too. So but Mrs. Walker.
Yes, sir. Okay, Daryl did mention a little bit about how special this award is. How this happened is at the very beginning of the year, we received an email from the state of Ohio, and they were asking every school in Ohio for a recommendation of a classified staff member that works in our school that makes a difference. And this is called the RISE Award. It's recognizing inspiring school employees. And in order to think of a person, there were 5 pieces that we had to look at, specifying work performance, school and community involvement, leadership and commitment, support by colleagues, which I received 4 letters of recommendation. Again, you don't know that. An enhancement of classified staff perception within the school community. And I think sometimes folks think that teachers are what a school is about. But the reality is that it takes everybody, our assistants, our janitorial staff, transportation, etc. And Phil is a perfect person for that. Again, in the state of Ohio, there were many people nominated and only 2 were selected, and Phil is one of those 2. And shortly, we're going to have a ceremony where whoever is nominated to go to that national level will be coming, and I think that is in January, so more to come about that. When I started to think about what I was going to say today, I thought maybe the best thing to do is actually read the letter that I wrote to the nomination committee. And again, Phil, this is going to embarrass the life out of you, but this is going to be fun for me and my wife in particular. So this is what got him to where we are right now. Not this, but what he does. But this is my words explaining that. Phil Tudor is an absolutely amazing human who impacts the Goshen community in many ways. He has worked at Goshen High School for the past few years as a special education paraprofessional and oversees our work study program. Phil has fallen in love with the profession and has decided to go back to school to become an intervention specialist. See, again, he's doing big things here. Phil is a diamond and makes our school better by simply being in it. He has incredible relationships with his students, administration, teachers, and families. He's a go-to person. He volunteers for almost everything and is always looking to make high school an amazing experience for our kids. He is a father of 8 amazing children. Some he and his wife have adopted and have special needs. He is a husband, a coach, a U.S. Army combat veteran, a paraprofessional at Goshen local schools, and currently attending college to become a special education teacher. Phil's daughter passed away in 2018 after medical complications from open heart surgery. Phil and his wife, who's back there also, founded Ava's Army in 2013 to give back to Children's Hospital Medical Center for all that they did for your daughter and your family. Ava's Army started with Christmas gifts and random acts of kindness towards medically fragile children and has grown to include an annual car and bike show and benefit bike ride. Phil is a class sponsor here at the high school, a volunteer coach, and was a huge part of making Homecoming 2021 a huge success. Thank you for that. He is always looking to get involved in all things in order to grow his knowledge and become the best educator possible. During the 1920 school year, Mr. Tudor worked as a paraprofessional for a young man with significant disabilities. When the young man could no longer attend in person due to COVID, Mr. Tudor met with him every day virtually to provide support so that he could access the curriculum. He was a fantastic communicator and worked to keep the young man engaged and making progress. During the 2021 school year, we had Mr. Tudor shift to oversee our work study program. Mr. Tudor secures work for students with disabilities throughout our school district, supports them, and builds work skills and confidence. Our students have become productive citizens impacting our school community due to the work that Mr. Tudor has done to improve this program. As the principal of Goshen High School, I wholeheartedly trust Mr. Tudor and consider ourselves as being incredibly lucky to have Phil as a member of our school family. Mr. Tudor never says no, is actively involved in daily school functioning, supporting students, engages in being a class sponsor, helped secure food trucks and lighting for an outdoor homecoming dance, which was amazing. Simply put, he is one-of-a-kind individual who is making a difference and a fantastic role model for our community. This man makes a difference. So this is Phil. And Mike DeWine knows a little bit about Phil too and sent us a certificate that says Mike DeWine hereby officially recognizes Phil Tudor as you receive the 2021 RISE Award. On behalf of the state of Ohio, we join your friends, family, and colleagues in congratulating you as you receive the 2021 RISE Award. We take great pride in our educators and the positive impacts they have on students throughout our state, and we commend your commitment to making a difference and changing lives. The Goshen community is lucky to have you. Congratulations and best wishes for continued success. Congratulations.
So, first of all, Phil, from all of our hearts, I want to say thank you. And I don't know if anybody from the board wants to add anything, but this guy, he is has a significant impact on our community and our school community. We're so proud to have you. When I get the information, we'll share with it because there is going to be a virtual ceremony with the Superintendent of Ohio Department of Education, maybe the governor on there on a virtual ceremony with these guys. And I think he's the perfect person to win the national award, in my opinion, but I'm biased. So I want to thank you, and I'm sure that each one of us here extend the same to you. Thank you for all you do.
Congratulations. Well deserved.
Gotta walk down.
Thank you, sir.
Congratulations
for all you do.
Well deserved.
Mr. Tudor, who did you bring today?
Yes. I'll let y'all fill it.
My wife Angel and my mother Hazel Blevins and my father Jerry Blevins.
You gonna do your 30-minute speech first, or?
I'm working on it.
Ready for the national.
Yeah, so thank you for everything you do. It's greatly appreciated. I know on behalf of the board, we appreciate everything you and your family both done. It's always been great, so. At this time, before we move on to old business, if anybody would like to leave, we'll let you leave before we continue the rest of the board meeting. Otherwise, you're welcome to stay. It's your choice.
Yes, students, we'd love to have you just sit around, or you could go home and do homework and that type of thing, so.
Great job, kiddos.
Her friend said she's watching.
So that's why she's waiting. Hey, there you go.
So she wanted to make sure she waved.
You guys did.
You did a great job.
Okay.
Just quit.
Great job, young lady.
From the chair?
Great
job.
Oh, good. Holy moly.
Chop that leg right off.
No. Dad wants to talk about
All right, we'll move on to item 8, old business. Anybody have any old business? Nothing? Board members, anything want to talk about?
Just a reminder that we are closing on the property. So that's kind of a big thing right there. This we should hand out.
All right, moving on to item 9, new business. Item 8, do we have a motion to approve public hearing?
You just have one. Just have it.
Oh, that's that's following. My bad, sorry.
So I'm just going to quickly review. We've been working on a draft calendar for next school year. One of the big things with calendars is we're trying to ensure the maximum amount of time that we can get for instruction with the kids. In doing that, we got to keep up with state and federal mandates and a bunch of different pieces of fitting a calendar together that has enough student days and staff days in it. So we've worked as a committee, also took some feedback from community. Tonight is just kind of the highlights of that calendar and also the opportunity for some input. So looking at it, a lot is driven by, just so you know, everybody knows, a lot is driven by state testing and when that falls in the spring. So we get started earlier. I know there's some people that have said, let's go back to that after Labor Day start. And really that compacts that school year when we're given a state testing window in March and April. So we try to get as much instruction. So that's where the earlier start has come from as opposed to starting after Labor Day. So this year, we're going to start just a little bit later. We were able to flex some things in. Some of the highlights, the 18th is the student start, where last year we were a little earlier. We've heard a lot from our families and staff. The October fall break, where we do the 4-day weekend, is in a good spot, and we'd like to continue that. So we kept that piece of it. This year, we did have to do a split Christmas break. And in the staff or the parent feedback that you'll see in a minute, there was a question on that about breaking it up. January 2nd is the actual observed holiday. So it was either extended a day or split it up. And as we talked with high school staff and with other staff, that gives us another 2 days of instruction or another 2 days to do exams in the high school schedule. It lengthens that second quarter just a little bit, which that was in favor. So we split it a little bit this time, and that's just really where Christmas falls and how it falls. If we were to go to school on the 2nd, there's a whole lot of excess cost in that with bus contracts and things like that. So the 2nd was off, and then we just extended it to the 3rd and kind of split those 2 weeks up. Not always ideal, but it's kind of the way the calendar sometimes rotates. There's been a lot of requests for a later spring break. You know, we're always, if you're looking at that calendar, like March 13th through the 17th was our normal spring break. It's early. They've done some flexibility with the state testing calendar, so it's allowed us to flex that a little bit and put a spring break kind of after the English language arts piece, and then come back and be able to finish up math, science, social studies after spring break. It's also been a tradition, I guess, as I was given this calendar committee 12 years ago, I was told Veterans Day and Good Friday stay on the calendar. So we're keeping with Veterans Day and Good Friday, and we've worked that in with Good Friday is April 7th that year, Easter's the 9th, so we've tried to fit that in there as much as possible. And then the student last day is May 26th, and we have some staff. The staff will have to come back for a day after break, or after the Memorial Day break, but we've talked about that, and that seemed to be a good calendar. So I will quickly share with you a little bit of the community feedback, and I mentioned some of it. Splitting winter break up 3 weeks is a lot, but they were happy to see spring break is finally scheduled in April instead of March. There was that comment about starting school in September, and until something changes with that state testing schedule, to lose 3 weeks in August would be awful tough. So we do need to start there in August. And then again, the spring break seemed to be a popular one to try to get it around Easter. So with that being said, that's the feedback we got. Again, this went through all of our staff. We have a committee that gets together, looks at it, tries to look at 4 or 5 calendars, and this is the one we've landed on. So any input, any questions about that process, where that calendar's falling? You guys don't vote on this month. We'll vote on it next month. I'll continue to collect some feedback and use that if there's anything big that we need to change. But we would vote to approve that calendar then in January.
Anyone have anything?
I have a question. Would it make an impact on that the teachers coming back after that holiday at the end of the year if we put the day in January on the 3rd back to the 20th, or no? I'm sure there's a lot more that goes into it than obviously just me looking over this.
So, I mean, that's we always say as a calendar committee, it's that cake and eat it too, or square peg round hole piece. You can't, you've got to, we looked at it, yes. Okay. There is a little bit to it, but we looked at that option. We looked at taking one of the days off of fall break and making it 3 instead of 4. So it was kind of that come to a compromise there piece of it. Either way, it was going to be a shortened week with that January 2nd. So we just decided to leave the 3rd as well, to have a full 2-week break. Yeah. If that answered it.
Yeah, I'm just I imagine the teachers, I wonder how they feel about coming back after that holiday weekend.
So it's a good point. We kind of take it as a committee and they take it back to their buildings. Okay. So that was favored versus shortening Christmas or shortening another break.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think one of those things is, I think during the past 2 years, people have recognized a lot of the importance of leaving some breaks inside of the year.
Yeah.
And it's all a trade-off because you got to go a certain amount of days.
Right.
So you could pick and you could say, I trade this one for this one.
Right.
And honestly, they probably have discussed that in some manner, in some way.
Yeah.
That is, you hate the fact that they got to stick around, but the flip side is if you had kids just come on the 19th, I think I know what attendance would be.
Yeah.
So for one day, so.
Yeah.
Kind of works out well for the high school because they can go 19th and 20th for final exams in December. They have 2 days of finals.
So 175 days catches everything.
Yeah, and 184 student, or 184 staff, 175 students. Yep. Yep.
Anything else? Anything else from you guys? All right.
I'll just point out that if the public had any comments, it's appropriate during the public participation part on that.
All right.
Would anyone like a hard copy? There's some there. I don't know if you guys would like one. There's calendars.
Please notice that if you do pick up one, it says draft. It's not approved yet until next month.
Next month.
We have had changes to that, so.
All right, so we have a motion to approve item A.
So move.
First, we have a second.
Second.
First and second, any questions? Now, Mr. Shank, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Rivera? Yes. Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Benteen?
Yes.
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
And that's simply that we'll be bringing it back next.
Next month, yep. All right, moving on to item B, public participation. Do we have anybody in the audience that would like to speak to the Board of Education?
And I don't think there's anybody on the list.
Oh, nobody on the list? Okay.
Is anybody on the public on the calendar?
All right. All right, moving on to item 9C, financials. Do we have a motion to approve items 1 through 8? So moved. We have a first. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a first and a second. Are there any questions? If not, Mr. Schenk, will you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Benteen.
Yes.
Mr. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Rivera. Yes.
All right, moving on to 9D, personnel motions. Do we have a motion to approve items 1 through 5?
So moved.
We have a first. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a first and a second. Are there any questions? If not, Mr. Schenk, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Benteen,
Yes.
Mr. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Rivera. Yes. Mrs. Gray.
Yes.
Moving on to item 9E, miscellaneous. Do we have a motion to approve items 1 and 2?
So moved.
We have a first. We have a second.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Are there any questions? If not, Mr. Schenk, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Benteen,
Yes.
Mr. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Rivera. Yes. Mrs. Gray.
Yes.
All right, moving on to 9F, Board of Education reports.
I don't have.
Nothing? Mrs. Gray?
I do not have anything either this month.
Mr. Herrera?
I do not.
All right. Thank you. All right, this time we'll move over to 9G, Superintendent's Report, and turn it over to Mr. Edwards.
No, it's fine.
Is it?
Yeah, I always
Okay.
try to read his mind. I can't read his mind as well as the phone.
So just keeping the board updated on, as we stated, at the beginning of the school year, we're watching our student health data and the COVID-19. I'm going to go through what the current data is on that. It's displayed behind you here, up here. And you can see that in fact, September was our worst month, and that was the cases per 100,000 7-day rolling average in Claremont County. Then, as you can see, it decreased in October. And then at the beginning of November, these are just the slides from the board meeting. We were down to about a third of what we were experiencing at the beginning of the year. And I'm sure everybody can watch the news and everybody hears that you can see that, yes, cases are up in Claremont County. And yes, they are up in the school district. This month's cases, or excuse me, last month's cases, we were sitting at 192 students and 35 staff members. We do have 2,917 students, to put that in perspective. And as you can see this month, we're up to 242 students and 47 staff members. And the cases are slowly rising, as you can see, across the month. You can see that while there are quite a few cases, the quarantines are not significant. And that's mostly due to the new rules that have been implemented. Our parents have been great and the kids have been great adopting to the new modified quarantines, which we're so thankful to have and keep kids in school. We do have to juggle staff quite a bit and also try to keep kids up while they're absent. And whether that's from having COVID or from having quarantined from a family member at home. So like I had somebody call me today and told me that their child was not going to be at school tomorrow. I was going to answer the phone at 5 o'clock because grandpa, they had gotten together and grandpa had COVID and the health department told them they couldn't come to school. So which is true for an out of school point. In school, we can deal with that differently. But so we're still juggling. We're still keeping up. Yes, it is an impediment to education, but it is what it is, and I commend our staff and families for hanging in there. And we plan on keep on continuing what we're doing, and we're able to maintain and keep it staffed in different ways. So attendance, that was the first 2 months of school. Of course, it went up in November. We're down a little bit now, and that's but it's still hanging somewhat there. And we'll continue to keep you updated as for the public's sake. The board members get an email. It was on a daily basis. We're doing about every other day now. That gives them the exact numbers so that they're able to track those as they make decisions. So, do you have any questions on that?
Are most of our families doing the 14-day mask or like the modified 7-day?
Yes. Most of them choose to do that, and that they're very appreciative of being able to keep their kids in school. So. And we are too. which is something we pushed for and we're proud that finally got modified. So, yeah. Other questions? Okay, so I brought to you, and you have on the table in front of you, but I've got a synopsis of it here, and I'm not going to go through page by page. The enrollment study that we did this past month ago, and that's with the company Future Think, because we did it in 2019 because we knew that our community was growing and our student population was growing. We commissioned them. They did the study in 2019, and then we just had to review the data as we talked about in the spring. We were going to have them do this fall, and what's going on in our community. But one thing we did find was their projections for 2 years were pretty accurate. I'm just going to walk through some of the stuff here. First of all, and I'll let you hit the buttons, Brian, when I do, so I can point to a couple numbers up here. But when they did the enrollment studies, here's the things they considered. They considered birth data, live birth data, historical enrollment, what's the trends inside of your district, community demographics, and housing information, okay? And we don't have to make any decisions or anything tonight on any of this data. It's just here for your information as we go about the spring and making lots of decisions. This is Ohio. Actually, I don't know if you know, but I mean, birth rates in Ohio are decreasing. And actually, most places across the United States, people are having less children. And then this is the birth count by zip code, which, like, if you look at 45122, it really hasn't changed. And the 45122. Go ahead, Brian. But part of the reason a community grows is housing. So in their study, they talked to the township, and they included in there 3 developments, and they're the only ones that they have definite plans, and then we know that they're moving forward, and we know when those are starting. When they met with Chief Pegram from the township, and that's the Villages of Belmont, which is starting in the summer for 92 condos. Barclave Cove, which is the one on Short 48 Snyder, that they'll have their first ones for sale in the spring. And then the subdivision on 132 that is going through its final development plans and is going to start this year. So those are the only ones. I know a lot of people know that there are other things out there that are pending. I know Chief Pegram talked to you guys a little bit about that, but those are not in here. So, and this is the May 2019 report right here. And you're going to see a couple different numbers because a couple spots they include pre-K in there, and a couple they don't. Like this one doesn't have pre-K on it, but this was their projection. And so they ended off by 37, or about 1.29% off. So it's pretty good, I'd say, for 2 years. And then over the last 10 years, student enrollment increased by 193 students. So that would be like about 50 a building, which would be 2.5 classrooms a building. And then total enrollment, there's 2937. And actually when enrollment settled out after it's 2017, but 2017. And the historical enrollment was when we finished the buildings, they were built for, according to the Ohio Facilities Commission, 2,577. Because you can look back, like in 06, we had 2,470. Teaching stations capacity, if you max it out, would be 2,805. And then our current enrollment is 2,917. So, and then this is just the historical enrollment over time over those last 10 years. The next one, Mr. Bailey. And this is all in your packet there. I just took certain slides out by building too as well. And then they made 2 types of projections. One was a moderate, which is what they're low, and a high. And then their moderate one this time says from what you're sitting now at the 2,917 that you would grow 131 students, or another 4.5% in the next 10 years. And so that would equal the 3,068 out there at 31, 32. And then again, that's the moderate by building. This is where we currently sit here, and that's their moderate there at the end. And then, of course, a lot's already happened And a lot of kids have already been accommodated for. Over the past couple of years, obviously, the modulars we put back in Spalding accommodates for so those kids repurposing rooms like the library and the room beside it here at the high school, using those rooms for other things. So the next one. So you can see that their projections, their moderate had it at 2,990 when we talked about this back in 19. Now they're like 3,068. So they're projecting higher. And then the high enrollment says another 399 kids, or about another 100 a building, or a 14% increase in that time period. So that would put us at 3,336 students if that projection is right, from the 2917 that we have now, or about another 400 kids. And there's your capacity by building, whereas here's the numbers that you sit at now. You can see over time what happens out there at the end. Mark would be up 120. Spalding would be up 89. Middle school up about 62, and high school up 126. So, and back then it was interesting. The high projections they had were 390 for the 10 years, but that included 2 years that are biased versus 2 years into the future now. So. And that was their high projection back then, was 3,183 in that 10 years, and that's 3,336 now. So, and last slide on this is just, I know that you're probably gonna say, so what was our capacity? And that was what the capacity was back then. Of course, we find ways to accommodate students. Spalding was our tightest, so we put modulars up. So, just kind of see there the data. So these are just, I mean, like I said, these are important numbers that will impact our future planning. These are the things that went into it. This is the piece where they said, hey, with any projection, you should pay close attention to the live birth counts, enrollment in elementary schools, housing growth. Each of those factors have an impact on future student enrollment. So questions of any count on those numbers at this point in time? I know that that packet is huge. I mean, they go into, history, public school enrollment, private school enrollment, what counties in Ohio are growing, what counties are shrinking, that type of thing. Any question on the numbers? Lots of questions on the numbers. You're going to read the packet. It's a lot. That's why I thought I'd give you the synopsis. So.
I mean, it's good to see that their projection, 2 years ago was pretty close to what they said. So, I mean, that's gives them a lot of credibility.
Yeah.
So
they're who a lot of the schools in Ohio use to OFCC works with. So really, I guess one of the things that I want to bring up is that I think it's important that as we look at the numbers that, we usually talk about these in April, but we probably are going to need to bump that time up to talk about those. And I would recommend that we did like a work session in late January, mid to late January, to where you could actually get into these and look in depth. That's why I know that this is the first time you've seen this. And it's a lot. So, but as far as for future planning, I'd recommend we did something in January, maybe a 3 hour sit down and look at just with this, just a work session, not a regular board meeting, but a work session. So
do you have any dates picked out that works for you guys?
I do not have a date picked out, except I've got a week picked out.
Okay.
So, and I know that Mrs. Gray has a very busy evening and weekend schedule coaching youth sports. And I know that our treasurer with older youth sports, right? So our regular board meeting is the 10th. So I would recommend late in that next week, because the 17th is Martin Luther King Day. I would recommend late in that next week or early the following week.
You guys prefer doing a 3-hour session in the evening or do a Saturday morning? What do you think works best with what's going on in January?
That's on what Coach thinks here.
Coach Gray, what do you think?
I can make anything work. I just might run right on time.
Would you rather do a Saturday morning early or an evening?
Saturday, like the 22nd.
Mm-hmm.
I could do Saturday the 22nd sometime between noon and 3. Or before 9 a.m. Or after 8 p.m.
So 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. Picked up there.
I thought she would say between noon
It's up to you.
and 12:30 or something.
I feel like noon to 3 is
Noon to 3.
a lot of time.
Yeah.
Available on my calendar.
I mean, we can do it during the week if we want,
can
you
do
know, if the evenings are
Yes.
better.
I could do it evening. Mondays and Wednesdays are hard. Lauren plays 7th grade and I.
So the
could
20th?
practice. The 20th, I could do.
So we want to do a 6 to 9?
Okay.
6 to 9? We get down there, we'll just leave, right? All right, so 20th? 6 to 9.
Girls game that night.
Yeah.
No,
I'll just.
That good for you, Mr. Schenkel?
we'll make it work, sir.
You're the big part of it.
Yeah.
Actually, probably the biggest part.
Does it work for you, Mr. Schenkel? Another night.
Oh, no, I'll just,
You're good?
yeah, I mean, there's a girls game. I mean, I don't have to be there.
Okay. All right. All right, that's January.
Okay. All right, now we'll talk about at the January meeting, things you guys want me to bring.
Okay.
And I can have conversations with you, be thinking about that, of things that you would like to bring.
You just want us to email you those? or-
Yes. Email me the questions and things you would like for me to bring. And we'll talk about it at January 10th as well.
Okay.
All right, so next thing I have on there is goals update, and I have those in front of you. And I just want to give you a few highlights off of these. Under high quality instruction, I guess I want to bring up the work that our teachers and our curriculum folks do, and highlight a little bit of that. K-5 math textbook implementation on the second bullet is going really, really well. We finally got in all of our math and manipulative materials for them that were on back order, like everything else in society is. Are having our math consultant for Hamilton County Educational Service Center meeting with the teachers during their PLC times and helping support them and do observations of them in the implementation of this. So whenever we do move materials, we try to make sure that we support our teachers in the implementation. Under early literacy, there's a lot of talk in there about assessments and testing. That's because we're in December, we're in the first semester, we're measuring where the kids are at so we can continue to place them in intervention groups and pop them in and out and change instruction as state testing comes up. I will point out that's what the Acadians benchmark assessment testing is that's completed. That measures letter names at Mark Hook, measures letter names, first sound fluency, phoneme segmentation fluency, nonsense word fluency, and oral reading fluency and accuracy. So it kind of tells you where our kids stand, and we did see a lot of positive growth in our Mark Hook kiddos this year in first semester on those. Our MAP assessments have been underway at Mark Cook, and we use that to look at informational text, literary text, and vocabulary work, and that all that guides our teachers and where we go after this period of time with them. And I have to commend the work of Mrs. Ginther, our principals, those levels, and our teachers who are taking that and going with it. They're even implementing the letters training, which is on the science of reading, So those guys, they don't just prepare lessons that show up. They are working hard to get better. Like the one there, you see targeted coaching in there. Mrs. Ginther goes in and works with some of our teachers, and then on what they want to improve on and work in, they go in, they tag team a lesson, or observe each other, teach, and get better. So I love the fact the way our staff wants to grow. Third grade fall reading scores came in. The state average this year on those is a 40% of the kids across the state of Ohio passed. Of course, the kids have another chance in the spring. This is what the third grade reading guarantee along with math assessments is based on whether they get promoted or not. So that state was at a 40. We were at a 46.54, I believe. So about 6.5 points above the state average, which is outstanding. It's where you want to be. For reference sake, we're still seeing the impact of the pandemic on our kids because 2 years ago, we were at 54. State average, I think, was maybe a 46. So you can see that still both the state and us are still trying to close those gaps. That's not actually on this sheet if you're looking for that number. This is because it just came in today. Last year, the state was at 37 and we were at 42. This year, the state's at 40, we're at 46. 19, it was 46 and 54, I think. So you can see we're still working hard to close that gap. In fact, I talked to Mrs. Andrews. I said, what are you expecting our kids, how they're doing? And she says, well, I think it'll be better because we're closing gaps slowly. I think spring is going to look much better because we'll have another 4 or 5 months with the kids. But I think the realistic part is that I think as we challenge ourselves and as we challenge the kids to be their very, very best, we know there's some impact that missing an entire quarter of the school year. And last year, 25,000 school days lost to COVID. Plus whatever we've lost this year with COVID, plus online learning last year, we're still working hard. I think we got a good plan with all the money we've spent on reading intervention, math intervention, K-12. But I think there's still a lot of work to be done, So I think we're going to find that as that number indicates, we're closing the gap faster than the state of Ohio is closing it. And it's improved since last year. And I'm glad of that. And that's the exact thing I said. That's what I want to see. I think we all want to see. So
it's that was the third grade.
Third grade, because they're the only ones to take a fall test.
And when did they take that? We were probably still under the old quarantine guidelines, so people were still.
Oh, we were just out of them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So we're still being impacted.
We're impacted by this year's quarantines, this year's cases. We've had 242. I mean, those are absences that never happened.
Right.
And when kids do that, they're missing 2 weeks.
Right.
So, and then.
So hopefully we'll see a improvement in that.
Yeah.
Now that students can be back in.
Yeah. And we're definitely seeing improvement in that. So there's no doubt about that. So that was early literacy. College and career readiness, I'll just point out a couple of things real quick. I know our Wood Tech people are excited to deliver a couple of the beds that they've been working on, that Sleep in Heavenly Peace, which is a neat thing. We're still got they're going to do that Saturday to some families in need. They've partnered with that organization for children that need beds in the community. And they're excited to be able to deliver their first couple of beds on Saturday. So we still got credentialing going on. The third bullet had our first student who earned a Microsoft Expert credential and several more who've earned a full Microsoft Suite Associate certificates that gives them tools whether they're going out in the workforce, either for a part-time job while they're going to college or for a full-time job. I could probably use some of those credentials myself. It's like Excel and Access, guys. Also, about the seventh bullet down, conducted the Proving Ground Speaker Series. This is a neat thing. We had 180 to 200 kids identified under the Proving Ground grant that we're in with Harvard as eligible to go to these speaker series. So we've got speakers from various career fields that come in, talk about their journey in their career and how kids can get there. This month, speakers came from the Lion and Panda Informational Tech and Marketing Company and Mercy Health Claremont to talk about the medical field. They also do some things like mock interviews and will conduct tours for these kids too as well, which is a neat thing. So I do want to point out in technology education, hats off to Mark Slagle, who we did get the official notice that we told you about last month, applied for a grant for our Chromebooks to get reimbursement for our Chromebooks that we knew were important that we purchased. And we got a grant for $221,940.
Is that just about cover?
What was the total bill on those, Shankle? Yeah. Yeah, we had somewhere between three and 400,000 things. So, oh yeah, it absolutely helps. And the rest of those will be covered out of ESSER funds. So, communication, love the parent advisory groups. Mark Edwards visited the Mark Hook PAC and talked about Portrait of a Graduate and how what's happening in college and career readiness. And I visited the Spalding PAC and talked about what's going on in Goshen local schools. So, and then I think Jessica Kendall, they referred to her being in that under student development. Well, we're talking a little about staff development. We've got our 14 teachers going through the Aspiring Leaders Academy, which is, we're having a blast with that. Giving them a little leadership skills and how to be better leaders inside their classroom, outside their classroom, in their community, and inspiring them if any of them want to be a leader inside the school buildings. So growing them. It's growing us too, isn't it, Mr. Bailey? So they ask hard questions too, They want to know about how do you decide a snow day and things like that.
So wake up at 3 a.m. and meet me.
Yeah, nobody has taken me up on my offers. I'll tell you that. Nobody was with us at 2:45 picking up the salt truck the other day. So, anyways, now in the kids' leadership, we hosted the SBAC Leadership Conference, where 6 kids from each league school came here. The Maker Care class, and this is one of the neatest things I think, that how our kids in our community takes care of our kids. The Maker Care class at GMS made 60 stockings for the senior citizens. NJHS sponsored a holiday food drive and collected 2,800 cans. And every building had a giving tree program of some type, and every single kid and family were taken care of underneath of that. And that really makes me very, very proud of how our kids take care of each other, our kids give back to the community, and how our grown-ups give back. So the only other thing is we are having a meeting later this week just to remind you that the band trip is going on in February, and we're just touching base with Mr. O and making sure everything is good to go with everything that's going on in our nation, and everything is good to go. He just wants to communicate on what's going on. So as far as like the requirements of the company and stuff. So, and nothing changed on that with COVID or anything, what he presented when he was here. So, any questions on that? Deborah, do you want to talk any about the Business Advisory Committee? The notes are in there because we have the Business Advisory as a reminder, as an official committee of the board. You guys get the notes, and Deborah and Julie are on the Business Advisory Committee as representatives of the board. And do you want to talk any about what's going on?
Yeah. First of all, I have to say I love attending this committee meeting because there are so many people involved from our community and from local businesses and just people connected that I don't see everywhere else, right? A lot of engagement and a lot of good collaboration. So we broke out into groups this past time and talked about what the most important areas are that we feel would have the biggest impact on students K through 12 and using the Where To tracker and connecting them to careers, college, whatever it might be that fit our whole population of students. So a lot of good collaboration, talk from parents, business leaders, and a lot of educators in the room as well. So.
And you have the minutes of the committee there. And I love it because they really challenge all of us to stretch our thoughts.
Yeah.
And how we reach out and grow our preparation of kids for college and career.
Yeah, it's really neat because there's some alumni who don't have students here and are part of our business community. And then there's some parents included in that, and some teachers who attend, some administrators. So when they break out into teams, I think he divides them strategically, I imagine, because there's a lot of collaboration of you hear impact from like a business leader that you wouldn't necessarily know as a parent. Or when we bring up things like, this would be really cool to do in the classroom, and a teacher's like, well, how would you make that happen, right? Like, how can we actually make that happen? Or like, they start thinking about, oh, we could use this bell, or like this time after lunch. So it's really neat to see like ideas come to fruition.
So those minutes are in front of you so that you know what happens there. And then the other notes I have are holiday luncheon, just a reminder that is this Wednesday. Organizational meeting date is January 10th at 6:30. And number 7, you guys do need to appoint a president pro tem to run that January organizational meeting, because you will not have a president until that meeting.
So I'd like to nominate John Gray that we do. Okay.
Oh, you need a second? Second.
We need to vote on that, I guess, right?
If you don't mind.
All right, do we have a motion to appoint president
So moved.
pro tem for January meeting?
So moved.
We have a first, we have a second.
Second.
Any questions? If not, Mr. Shink, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Venteen,
Yes.
Mr. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Rivera,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray.
Yes.
And so that's just a reminder, what he'll run that meeting until new officers are selected. Okay, the last item that I have is I included in your packet the OSBA Effective School Board Award A to Z checklist. Typically, you guys look at last year's. You asked Todd, Brian, and myself to write down some of the things that the board has done over the past year. You guys then, I will email that out to you guys, and you guys bring back suggestions. And then I bring those to the January 10th board meeting. Would you like to handle it that way again? Or would you like to do it some different manner?
Seems to work. I'm good.
Yeah.
Continue as is. I mean, I don't really see any big issues with it. Seems to be working.
So you guys have a copy there, and so you can see examples that you've put down in the past for the A to Z checklist. And you can take a look under each category and be thinking about if there's something you would like to have there. And we'll go through and put down some of the things that the board has done in each category. And then you can look for my email of that to you to prompt you. If you want to put something out to me in advance, that's fine too.
Sounds good.
And now the last part is the annual, semi-annual bullying report, and I'll give it to Mr. Bailey to do that.
So I just have a couple of slides. Just pursuant to House Bill, we do report to you guys and to the public semi-annually a bullying update, which follows our bullying policy. I'd like to kind of start with, and there's a lot of language there, but our big goal is to create an environment within our schools that we don't have to worry about bullying. And I think, if you look at the flow chart there on the left, which is hard to see for you where you're sitting, anytime we have a situation where a student or parent, say there's a bullying issue going on, we take it to a process, an investigation process, and kind of determine if it is bullying or if it's just, something that we can resolve that isn't, continued, sustained. The kid has a power over somebody. But, a lot of times what we find is, we've got conflict resolution that we need to work on with kids and just being able to relate to one another. So the systems we have placed in the building, I think, do a good job from K-12. And I'm just go through them real quick. We follow the old VAES bullying program, which gets the teachers involved, the students involved as well. You've heard PBIS probably ad nauseum for the past 4 or 5 years. It's done wonders for our culture within our buildings of rewarding the positive behaviors of kids, of teaching them, from how to walk in the hallway at Mark Cook all the way to, how to act here at the high school at different levels. So, if you're continually teaching and trying to work on the expectations of how you treat others and how you respect yourself in the building, we don't run into a ton of that. The Hope Squad piece that's put at the high school really pulls in and works, to help all students out The peer mentoring groups, we have those at all buildings really between the counselors. Our school counselors and SROs are going into the classrooms and they work on lessons on emotion recognition and coping skills, conflict resolution, growth mindset. What is bullying? We also define bullying with our staff so that they understand what bullying is so that we're looking for it. That we then get the student definition of bullying and their role to recognize and report it. So we work with them in the classrooms on that. And then the counselors also really work hard on, especially at the younger ages, scenarios and conversations regarding bulliers. What's a bystander's role if they see it going on, to, the victim's role if something like that happens. With all of that being said, at the current time, we do not have any cases of bullying that have been disciplined. So when you talk about bullying discipline, that means we've taken it through the flow chart and it has been a true case of bullying. So there's a difference there between some of that conflict resolution stuff that is a one-time thing that happened on the bus or in the classroom or at lunch. And then if you investigate that and it turns out, yes, the person did have power over it, it was persistent, it was continued, or it was a group of students, that's when you get into the discipline side. So that's the piece that we track. So I think with all those things in place, if we're not aware of those things, and I think that's a lot of the things our principals and teachers talk about, we need to be made aware of those from parents. Our parents do a good job of reaching out to teachers at the elementary levels through different modes and being able to deal with that early on to where it doesn't turn into something sustained or something that we can't help the kids work through. So this report's put on our webpage. When we update it, I'll report back to you guys again in June to let you know where we stand with it. Typically, this is right on pace. Normally, you have 1 to 2 cases a year that end up being a disciplined issue. It's not a big piece, but that's kind of where we're at right now. So questions on any of that? I mean, again, I do feel like our buildings, between our counselors, our principals, our teachers, do implement a lot of initiatives that help our kids have avenues to go to if they're struggling with peer-to-peer sometimes. So I think that is kudos to a lot of the things we put in place. So that is the semi-annual bullying report that we will for House Bill 276.
All right. Anything else?
That's all I have, sir.
All right, anybody have anything else on their other? Board?
Do not.
Can I just add something that's super fast? It's just a little shout out to the girls basketball because of no COVID this year. If they bought a candy bar from our girls basketball team, it's not, it was a fundraiser, but the fundraiser is to pull names from Shelley who need. And so they raised like $1,000 and we're taking them to Cole Saturday morning as part of their practice. And we're going buying presents and doing that. And, for a lot of those girls, it's really cool to see that. And, I think it's just one of those things that, you talk about our kids giving. It's pretty neat. So I just wanted to share that with all of our other kids. That most of the time we want to fundraise to get them a sweatshirt or whatever, but it's all for other kids. So give them a plug for the girls.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Do you think we should send a thank you to Procter & Gamble?
We usually do, right? Yeah, we do that every month.
Yep.
I will love it.
Good reminder.
Yep.
Make sure.
Anything else? All right, with nothing else, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We have a first, we have a second.
Second.
First and second, any questions? If not, Mr. Sink, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Rivera,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Benty.
Yes.
All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned at